Court has stayed the Gujarat High Court order that rejected her bail and asked Teesta Setalvad to surrender. And this relief has been provided to Teesta Setalvad by the Supreme Court in this late night hearing for 1 week. Let me also go across to my colleague Ananya Bhatnagar, who's joining us, tracking more on this hearing. So Ananya, the final decision of the Supreme Court is out?
Well, definitely the final decision of this three judges bench headed by Justice B.R. Gavai is clearly out. The Supreme Court has stayed this order for particularly 1 week. Though no order has been given out on the merits of this case, it is only with regards to the request that was made to the Gujarat HC for staying the order, enabling Teesta Setalvad to approach Supreme Court. But what has been very clearly mentioned by the court in its order is that, this should not affect any kind of a proceeding or any kind of a challenge that comes up before the Supreme Court. Because remember that post this particular order, Teesta Setalvad will be knocking the doors of the Supreme Court. And in fact, the Supreme Court very, very clearly saying, and I'll read that part of the order for you, is in fact that we are not on merits but only going through the part of the order asking for immediate surrender. In ordinary circumstances, we would not have considered such a request, but here, after the registration of the FIR on June 25 and arrest, this court granted interim bail on certain conditions. One of the contentions that was that the petitioner is a lady. We find then, taking into consideration that fact, the learned single judge ought to have granted some time to the petitioner, basically saying that the single judge bench of the Gujarat High Court should have given out certain time to, in fact, Teesta Setalvad to approach the Supreme Court. But now, since it's the Supreme Court's order, the matter will be heard in a week's time. It will have to start, and this interim protection, that is kind of an interim protection granted to, in fact, Teesta Setalvad for 1 week. She will not have to surrender to, in fact, the police at this point of time. Definitely a big breather coming in for Teesta Setalvad at this point of time. But interestingly, we'll have to wait and watch for the main hearing to take place in the coming week and what would be the arguments of, in fact, both the sides. The Gujarat government has constantly been arguing, and in fact, the Solicitor General appearing for the Gujarat government has constantly said that, she is an ordinary criminal, but she thinks that she is not an ordinary criminal. And in fact, it's also been alleged by the Solicitor General that she has been misusing, in fact, every forum, including the Supreme Court of India. But how much of all of this plays up before, in fact, the Supreme Court, when it actually goes on to hear the case on merits, is something that is a matter of time. We'll get to know when. Yeah.
So, Anand, I just wanted to understand from you, as it stands, as far as this emergency hearing is concerned, the Supreme Court has decided that at least for 1 week, no arrest should be done, and she does not need to surrender for another 1 week. But after that, there will be another hearing afresh on the merits of the bail plea itself at the Supreme Court level?
Well, yes, definitely. There would be a hearing on the Supreme Court level. There will be a hearing by a three judges bench of the Supreme Court. In fact, the Chief Justice of India has been asked by this particular order itself to constitute a bench to hear this matter. Okay. The matter is now placed before the Chief Justice of India to be, assigned a quorum, a bench on this. And then proper hearing on merits would take place. Remember that this hearing was only with regards to a breathing period to be given to Teesta Setalvad to actually choose or exercise his legal remedies. This was not completely on the merits of the case, and was only granted just because the Supreme Court had already granted her interim bail, so they're taking into account that she is a lady. In fact, the Supreme Court, when it had granted this particular relief, had not considered the merits of this particular case or the gravity of allegations against Teesta Setalvad.
All right. Ananya, I request you to stay with us because we'll go through what the arguments were as this emergency hearing was done. Remember, there was a Gujarat High Court hearing today in the morning which rejected the bail plea for Teesta Setalvad. Then there was a two-judge bench hearing at the Supreme Court which also refused interim relief. But now this is the third hearing in a day. And now there is 1 week's relief coming Teesta Setalvad's way. Let me also go across to Tom Vadakkan of the BJP. Sir, how do you look at this? The Supreme Court asking for at least 1 week's relief for Teesta Setalvad. Also questioning what is the urgency really when she's been on bail for many months already.
Well, the matter is sub judice. For a political party to say anything at this juncture would be influencing the judiciary. But yes, her acts, her omissions and commissions are well known across the country. she's run a propaganda campaign against the former Chief Minister of Gujarat, and her connect with the senior leader Ahmed Patel has been also well known and established. I myself have witnessed her in the office of Ahmed Patel. I know what has been going on for some time, but I don't want to come into public domain on this right now, because this is a matter that's before the Supreme Court again. So let the matter be settled, and law will take its own course. I'm sure the judges would keep in mind the damage that she has done to the Gujarat establishment, and continuing her tirade against the Prime Minister of India.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. This is indeed a sub judice matter, so, it will be difficult to say anything more than that. But I want to go back across to my colleague Ananya Bhatnagar one more time on what was basically the argument that was made in this hearing. What were the arguments made by both sides, or was it that the judges did question what was the urgency as far as the Gujarat High Court order is concerned?
Well, definitely. One of the major questions about before the Supreme Court was constantly asking both these sides, whether it's the Solicitor General of India or a senior advocate, C.U. Singh, who was appearing for Teesta Setalvad. It was that, why did the single judge bench of the Gujarat High Court not grant any kind of a breather period? And that was the main focal point of, that particular hearing that was there. But the Solicitor General of India coming in, first I'll take you through the arguments that were given out by C.U. Singh, who was appearing for Teesta Setalvad. He was constantly saying that, a charge sheet has been filed in this matter, already. And in fact, the charges are not yet framed. So definitely, since the investigation in the matter is complete, as the charge sheet has been filed, she shall be granted bail 10th month, and in fact it was also said that since the Supreme Court had granted her interim bail, 10 months has passed that also, and she's not violated any kind of a contention. But opposing all of these submissions, the Solicitor General of India coming in and clearly saying that she's not somebody who is an ordinary person. These are not ordinary circumstances. In fact, this is not only itself an ordinary case. He goes on to say she's an ordinary criminal. He thinks that she's not an ordinary criminal, but she is. He was basically referring to how she was granted an urgent hearing at the Supreme Court, just like the normal, and she should be behaving like a normal person and wait for the Supreme Court to actually hear her petition. In fact, he also went on to say that the SIT had it was a Supreme Court made SIT which had made these findings against Teesta Setalvad, that she was a part and parcel to a criminal conspiracy. In fact, he also went on. Mr. Mehta also went on to say that she is because she isn't an ordinary. This isn't an ordinary case, and this is a person who takes every institution for a joyride. Somebody who writes to international organizations in Geneva, maligning the country's image. So definitely, the Solicitor General sticking to the point that this woman is a threat to the national security. This woman is somebody who had been trying to destabilize the government, the then government in Gujarat in 2002. And in fact, these are also the findings that were there by the single judge bench of the Gujarat High Court, wherein it is very, very clearly the Gujarat High Court has also said that, she was somebody who tried to destabilize the government there. She was a part and parcel to the conspiracy.
Okay, Ananya, just stay with me. I'm going to come back to you. S.T. Tushar Mehta did argue that the entire nation was maligned, entire state was maligned, not only inside the country but outside the country by the petitioner. It is not a question of one individual. These are offences that are against the integrity of the nation. Justice Gawal, though, said that it was understandable if the court had merely said the conduct of the petitioner was not worthy. But to directly say that they should be put in the dock is the question. We are sorry to say the single judge was totally wrong in not granting interim protection even for 1 week. When this court has granted interim bail, extending it by 1 week would have been ideal. I also want to go across to Swapnil